4 Pieces of Chicken, Episode 20 of Our Life and Times from the book, Betel Nuts and Other Stories by Simeon G. Silverio, Jr. Mrs. Puwede ho bang makuha ang basura ninyo? Mrs. Can I take your trash? Mang Isko asked Mrs. Silverio, who was sitting behind the desk in the front office of the printing press. Yes, you may, Mrs. Silverio replied as she read some papers. Mang Isko went inside the printing press and picked up the huge trash bin made of strips of bamboo. It was full of papers, some covered with printing ink, and others clean enough to be sold to scrap dealers. He brought the bin outside and dumped the papers in the waiting pushcart on the street. His wife, Aling Marina, was holding on to the pushcart. He returned the bin to the printing press and thanked Mrs. Silverio on his way out. How's your daughter, Mang Isko? Mrs. Mara Silverio asked him. She's doing fine, Mrs., the old man replied. She's doing well in school. Wait, Mrs. Silverio told him to hold on. She handed him 3 T-shirts with the name of the printing press on them, Christmas giveaways to friends and clients, and 2 calendars which also bore the name of the press. It was December 24th, 1958, Christmas Eve. The printing press on Plateria Street in Quiapo district of downtown Manila was still open at 7 that evening, rushing some calendar orders as giveaways by clients during the holiday season. Mang Isko thanked the kind lady as he walked towards his wife. Bigay ni Mrs. Silverio. Mrs. Silverio gave these, he told her. They pushed the cart towards Corrido Street, parked it near the corner, and sorted out the papers they had collected, removing the dirty ones from the clean. The cart was already full, and they were on their way home. They turned right on Corrido Street, left on P. Gomez, and left on Echage. Nearing the Quinta Market, Mang Isko asked his wife to buy some food for dinner. Bumili ka naman ng buto-buto para makahigop naman tayo ngayong Pasko ng mainit na sabaw. You buy some bones so we can have hot soup this Christmas, he told her. Sana magkasya itong 25 pesos na pera natin. I hope the 25 pesos we have is enough. Aling Marina answered as she went inside the market. Christmas shoppers filled the street and the market. People were not only buying food for their Noche Buena, Christmas Eve feast, but also gifts for their loved ones. Vendors were hawking food, clothing, toys, bags, and other items. The light bulbs inside the market cast a yellowish glare on patrons. Aling Marina walked carefully on the wet floor, with water spilling over the tiled stall counters from vendors washing fish. The water dripped on the floor and into the small gutter on the side of the stall. The smell of fish permeated the air as the vendors called out to passing customers. At 7 that evening, some of the vendors still claimed that the customer buying their items would be their buena mano, first customer of the day that would bring them luck. Kunin mo na yang isang tambak na ayungin, suki, sariwang-sariwa yan. Get that pile of fish, my loyal customer. They are so fresh. One fish vendor would pitch to a buyer. The buyer had to say something unpleasant for the big discount. Naku, sariwa ba yan? Namumula na ang mga nakaluwang mata. How can they be fresh when their bulging eyes are red already? The buyer would counter. Oh, sige, bigay ko na sa iyo ng 10. Okay, I will give it to you for 10 pesos. The seller would offer. 5 na lang, 5 pesos, the buyer would say. 7, the seller would say as she wrapped the fish. The buyer nodded, handing her the money. As she looked around, Aling Marina realized her 20 pesos would just be enough to buy the beef bones. She wanted to buy other things in addition to the bones. She walked towards the poultry section and asked for the cost of some pieces of chicken offered in one stall. That would be 30 pesos, one seller told her. It is too much. Puwede bang bawasan? Can you lower the price? She asked. Naku, hindi suki, mahal ang manok na yung magpapasko. Puwede mong bawasan ang bilang ng piraso. No, I can no longer reduce the price. Poultry meat is expensive these days because it's Christmas time. You can reduce the number of pieces you are buying. Aling Marina picked up 2 wings and 2 drumsticks. Eto, magkano ito? How much is this? She asked. 25, 25. 20 na lang, 20. Sige na nga, kung hindi ka lang buena mano. Okay, I'll give it to you since you are my first customer of the day. It was already 7:15 in the evening. It took another 10 minutes before Aling Marina came out of the market and walked towards Mang Isko. She was holding on to a bag of chicken, vegetables, spices, and bananas. Mahalang buto? The beef bones are expensive, she told him. Ano ang binili mo? What did you buy? Manok, chicken. Buti nagkasya ang pera mo. It's good your money was enough, Mang Isko said. Tigisa kami ni Nenet ng paa. Sa iyo yung 2 pakpak. Dadagdagan ko na lamang ng sabaw at gulay. Nenen have 1 drumstick each. You will have the 2 wings. I will just put more soup and vegetables. Bumili na rin ako ng saging. Tutal Pasko naman. I also bought bananas since it's Christmas, Aling Marina added. Mang Isko felt hunger in his stomach when food was mentioned. He hadn't eaten that day since there had been no food to eat. The couple pushed the cart along a Chage street towards the San Miguel district. After walking 10 blocks, they reached their squatter community, May Pagasa. The squatter shanties mushroomed during the time when Mang Jose was putting up a scrap paper and recycling business in the area. He was a squatter himself, putting up his bodega storage in another person's lot. When others realized they could make money picking up scraps, they built their own pushcarts and shanties in an adjacent vacant lot. Though there were no water, sewage, and electrical facilities, there was a public faucet nearby. At first, there were only 2 shanties. Now, there were 20 of them all clustered together in 2 lots, with barely enough walking space in between. 2 years ago, Mang Isko, his wife and daughter left their barrio in Samar province because they could not make ends meet. The place was ravaged by typhoons every year, and the small farm Mang Isko was working on could hardly produce a harvest. They went to Manila only to find out life was also difficult in the big city. With nothing to return to, they decided to hang on, hoping once their daughter Nenet graduated from high school, she could find a job while pursuing a college degree at night. As soon as they reached Mang Jose's bodega, Mang Isko got a bamboo bin and unloaded the contents of his pushcart into it. He had his load weighed, and after some computations, Mang Jose handed Mang Isko 30 pesos, his earnings for the day. Mang Isko and Aling Marina chained and padlocked their pushcart to a post beside the bodega and walked towards their shanty while groups of boys sang Christmas carols before the apartment houses nearby. Their 15-year-old daughter, Nenet, was inside the shanty, seated behind a small desk, reading a book by the glow of gaslight. Akala ko bakasyon kayo ngayon. Bakit nag-aaral ka pa? I thought it's your school vacation. How come you are still studying? Mang Isko asked his daughter. I am just finishing up this book I borrowed from Rita, Nenet replied. Baka masira ang mata mo, anak. Madilim na. You might ruin your eyes, daughter. It's already dark, Aling Marina said with concern. Sandali na lang po. Tatapusin ko na ito para makahiram uli ako. It will just be a while. I will finish this up so I can borrow again, Nenet answered. Nagsaing ka na ba? Did you cook rice already? Mang Isko asked his daughter. Opo, yes, she replied. Aling Marina went out to cook the chicken. She took out the clay stove and put it on a ground beside their shanty. She placed 4 pieces of firewood inside and started a fire. With spices, water, vegetables, and chicken, she started cooking. When it was ready, she spread out old newspapers on the floor of the shanty, took out plates, brought the food, and called Mang Isko and Nenet to eat. Nenet was already hungry, but when she noticed there were only 4 pieces of chicken to be shared by the 3 of them, she held back. Hindi na ako kakain, nanay. Busog pa ako. I won't eat, mother. I am still full, she told her mother. Paano ka mabubusog, eh? Tinapay lang ang kinain mo kanina. How can you be full when you just ate bread today? Rita's mom is inviting me to join them to hear the Misa de Aguinaldo Christmas Eve Mass, she said. Later, I will join them in their Noche Buena, so I will be full. Aling Marina knew she could not force her daughter to eat dinner with them, but if she would not be eating Noche Buena that midnight, she would not let her pass up her dinner. Mang Isko scooped water from a gasoline container using a small can, washing his hands. He went up into the shanty and sat on the floor beside Aling Marina. Together they feasted on the rice and chicken for dinner, sharing the 4 pieces of meat between them. It was a Christmas feast for them, with the hot and delicious chicken soup pouring inside Mang Isko's mouth, down to his throat and into his stomach. He never felt that good for a while when dried fish and rice was their staple fare. He consumed 2 pieces of the small senorita banana for dessert, saving the rest for his wife and daughter. After dinner, Mang Isko stepped out of the shanty and sat on a stool. Maliligo daw ang anak mo. Your daughter will take a bath, Aling Marina told him after a while. Mang Isko picked up the gasoline container and went towards the public faucet a block away. There was no line that evening, and he easily filled up the container with water. He brought it up into their house so Nenet could take a bath. Their shanty was just a small room, about 9 by 10 feet in wide. Mang Isko and Aling Marina stayed outside as Nenet took a bath inside the shanty. She poured water on herself by scooping water from the gasoline container using a small can. The water went through the openings between the floors, down to the ground, about 2 feet below the shanty. Since they did not have any toilet, they used a bedpan inside the house, put the waste in a plastic bag, and throw it in the garbage dump outside. Freshly bathed and wearing a newly ironed and clean uniform, Nenet didn't look like she lived in a shanty in a squatter community whenever she stepped out onto the street to go to school. She was very studious, fully aware of the sacrifices of her parents and their dire plight. She was about to graduate at the top of her class. Though there were scholarships available for her at prestigious universities, she was aware they would not be enough to tide them over until she graduated from college. Every time she saw her parents push the cart to pick up trash, her heart bled. But she knew the only way to help them at that time was to study hard. She planned to get a job after high school, study at night, and avail herself the scholarships. She was confident it was just a matter of time before she could lift her family from the quagmire of poverty. Hopefully, it would not be too late, and her parents would live long enough to enjoy the fruits of their sacrifices. Nanay, tatay, alis na ako. Mother, father, I will be leaving. Nenet bid farewell to her parents at about 9 in the evening. She would join her friend Rita and her family for a midnight mass and Noche Buena. Although she was not wearing new clothes for Christmas, they were clean and decent enough. Rita was her classmate who lived in a house a block away. Her mother worked as a clerk in a government office and handled public works. Though the mother's salary as a government employee was small, she made up for her share of kickbacks from private contracts. Her role was critical in their collection of payments from the government. If a contractor was not paying them a kickback, she could hold the processing of their payments until the contractors agreed to the corrupt terms standard for handling government projects. To make up for the kickbacks, the contractors would overcharge the costs at the expense of the taxpayers. Rita's father did not need to work because her mother earned more money than they could spend. Rita, age 16, drove a new car. The family had 4 other cars, a luxurious house and properties all over the city. By 10 in the evening, Mang Isko and Aling Marina laid their tired bodies on the mat spread across the floor of the small shanty. A light from a small gas lamp was flickering in a corner. They would let it on so Nenet would find her way inside when she arrived. Outside, they could still hear small children singing Christmas carols door to door for money. Aling Marina wanted very much to go to church and hear Mass together with the rest of the people, but she was ashamed to do so. Everyone wore fancy new clothes, yet she and Mang Isko could only afford their old, somewhat tattered attire. God could hear us from here, she comforted herself, as an excuse. They dozed off for hours until the noise of the opening door awakened them. It was Nenet coming home from her friend Rita's place. It was 1 o'clock Christmas Day. Nanay, tatay, nagpauwi sa akin ang nanay ni Rita ng hamon at queso de bola. Mother, father, Rita's mom gave us ham and cheese. Nenet whispered to her parents. Tabi mo na lamang dyan, anak. Bukas na natin kainin iyan. Put them aside, my daughter. Let us just eat them tomorrow. Nenet laid down beside her mother and hugged her from behind as she fell asleep. Aling Marina uttered a short prayer and thanked God for the blessings they received that day. She closed her eyes to go to sleep, looking forward to picking up more scrap papers later in the morning. She knew the trash would be plentiful, for it was Christmas Day. And that closes the book on this matter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Our Life and Times Stories, to listen to more stories like this. They are also contained in the books published by Papyrus Books, with email address papyrusbooks@yahoo.com. To order a copy of the books, go to Amazon.com and enter the name of the author, Simeon Silverio, in the browser.